Hey guys, day 148. We're coming up on day 150. I don't know if you can all believe that, but we are literally coming up on day 150. It is super good to see everybody today. I hope you guys had a really great week. I know we skipped last week. I've been ridiculously busy with interviews. I have another interview tomorrow night. So there's lots and lots and lots of content hopefully coming your way, everyone. That's the goal anyways. Keep the content coming, right? Keep the content coming. So good morning to everybody. Yes, good morning, Ed. Good morning to everyone. It's nice to see you guys. Here we go into another Spiritual Healthcare Wednesday. I have some really awesome questions to talk about today. Everything from like religion to and investigation, like where that all jives. All the way to a really, really great question from Gareth that I can't remember whether or not I answered, but I'm going to answer it again because there's always more to talk about on the subject. Because I don't think I did. It's been in my list of questions, and it's really awesome, and it's about whether or not spirits kind of steal each other's haunts. So it's really, really, it's cool. It's gonna be good. It's gonna be good. Ed says my new Snake and Pyre video is awesome. Congrats. Thank you so much. I'm glad you guys are having fun with them and enjoying it. We love them. We just have so much fun filming them because I think everybody involved has fun because it's like, you know, we get this idea and I come up with a concept and, you know, I listen to the song and then we start building these little fire videos and it's so much fun. So for those of you guys who have not seen my fire videos, you can go to snakeandpyre.com for that, Pyre. And they're really fun. So anyway, the last video was a little song, very short, called Spring Never Happens. And it was a great little video to film because the concept is all about, you know, if you can't find the things in your life to appreciate, then you're not going to have the aha moment that and the enlightenment and the manifestations that you want. So it's pretty cool. Really, really cool. So welcome everybody. As I say, we've got an awesome morning coming up because as I say, I've got a great question a while back from Dan. Good morning, Dan. About religion and the paranormal, and as well as I say, a great question from Gareth from Facebook, where he was asking in the Entity Seeker Enthusiast group about spirits and hauntings and how they kind of how they interchange with each other. Do they swap places? How does it work? Do they steal it, you know, locations from one another? And I love this question. You guys have the most insightful freaking questions. I'm telling you. Like, I mean, I think interviewers need to come and join spiritual healthcare because you guys should have been media. You guys ask like the best questions on the planet. I swear. They're really good, and every time like I have to think about them, and I love that. So it's great. So good morning to everyone. It is good to see all of you. As I say, I hope you guys had a really, really awesome last couple of weeks. As I say, mine have been crazy. I've been doing a lot of interviews. I was on the High Strangeness Factor just here recently with my friend Steve Ward, and it's a great little show. It was a great discussion. We ended up meeting through a mutual friend of ours, Chad Lewis, the amazing cryptozoologist and folklore expert. He's just fantastic, and we ended up connecting, and then bam, we did this show. So if you get a chance to listen to High Strangeness Factor, I highly recommend it. It's really cool. So it's lots of fun. So we did that one, and then I've got another one coming up tomorrow night that I'm gonna be doing. For those of you guys who were able to tune in to the Paranormal People live show last Friday, I thank you guys for coming. It was just awesome. I had so much fun. David Childers, who I've worked with multiple times on Haunted Hospitals and Paranormal 911, and the discussion in the group was just so good. I can't say enough about it. I just had an absolute blast. So the link is on entityseeker.ca in the radio and podcast section, as well as the video section, because it was all live video. And it was a really, really, really great experience, and I hope that eventually we do another show like that. I love the live shows where we actually get to talk to the audience and see each other, because I miss my live shows. That's the one reason I haven't taken any of my actual live shows and put them online, is because the live shows are meant to be experienced in the space with proper audio and visuals and massive screens and all of that, and they're just they don't translate well to internet because it's not enough. It's just not enough. It's meant to be a sensory experience and whatnot. And I'm hoping that coming up here by the fall, we should be looking at some U.S. Show dates as well. So let's just, cross our fingers. We're hoping for that. Should be really good. So let's crack into this today. Big questions, big topics. I love it. I want to start with Gareth's question because I thought it was so good. And he was asking, can entities be like magpies? I love this. Can entities be like magpies? Can they steal haunts and locations from one another? Can they like move into a location where one was and the other one wasn't? Because magpies, for those of you guys who don't know corvids, they'll do that, right? Like they'll fight over territory and stuff like that. It's really interesting. So this is a great question because it really has more to do with negative entities than it does with human happy spirits. And by negative entities, I define that as things that aren't human. These things are, they kind of, they're thought forms. They exist in their own they've got their own way of being in the world, right? They're usually thought forms that birth from negative energy. They were never people. They were never here, and whatnot. So, when it comes to human spirits, good morning, Des. When it comes to human spirits and things like that, you don't ever see this type of back and forth. It's primarily with these sort of more animalistic type entities. Good morning, everybody who's just logging in, by the way. And what ends up happening, what I've observed over the years that I've been doing this, has been the fact that these entities tend to be very, just very territorial in and amongst one another. So they tend to almost have a hierarchy back and forth as to whether or not these are, whether or not they are dominant over one another, where they sort of fit in the space, how they fit in within each other. And it tends to be very organized, which is really interesting. So in cases where we've got more than one, or seemingly more than one intelligence in the space, it can kind of fall into two different categories. Sometimes there's more than one. It's not often. The short answer is usually when you see multiple negative entities in a space, it usually comes back to being one intelligence. And what they'll do is they'll come up with these kind of bluff and these sort of bluffs and these mimics, where people go, oh, there's a child here and there's this negative entity and there's this and there's that, blah, 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 blah. And it usually, no, it's just not the case. A really great and I think famous example of this is the Enfield case, where the entity bluffed as an old man who actually did pass away in the house, Bill Wilkins, and the entity was, trying to mimic Bill's voice. It was amazing. And the audio is absolutely incredible from it. Maurice Gross and the Society of Psychical Research were the ones investigating. And it was a phenomenal case, but they will mimic, right, back and forth, and create these other personalities to kind of throw people off. It's a really neat phenomenon, but that's what they'll do. So usually if you have more than one in a space, it comes back to one. And in the times where there is more than one, they tend to be highly organized. So this gets really interesting because people usually think of negative entities as very chaotic, right? They think of them as very chaotic, and usually they're not at all. They tend to be very hierarchical, and they will set themselves up in a location where one will have one space, one will have another space, and they sort of divvy themselves up. Neither the twain shall meet. They tend to be very organized. So do they steal territory back and forth? I've never seen it. I've never seen where, you've had one and then it seemingly is replaced by another one. They seem to be very respectful of one another, if that's a sort of a weird term associating with these things, but they tend to be very respectful, and they don't really maneuver in on each other's territory. They will, however, maneuver in on people's territory, and they often get in fights and things like that with animals, household pets. I had a case actually a few years ago now, down in our river valley here in Edmonton, with a friend of mine who I now work with, and he had a dog at the time and same situation where he had a negative entity in the house, and this dog and this entity would go at it together. This dog would just like blow up, and you'd see it fighting with nothing in the kitchen or whatever, and they would scrap it out because you've got two like very animalistic intelligences both fighting for dominance. They both speak that same language, so they would go at it and whatnot, and then the dog would chase it off, or it would chase the dog, and it would go back and forth. So we see a lot of that where they're after that kind of interaction, and then we'll see it again with people, where if you don't have a dominant sort of a leader in the household, or you don't have a family that's leading in the household, what'll happen is that you'll get a battle, right? The negative entity will tend to want to fill that role and fill that space, so it will come in and start making its presence known, because it just wants that order. So as I say, it's really funny because most people think that these things are very chaotic, and they're really not. They have a very set way of being, and they have a set of expectations, which are usually weird. And if you fall out of line with those expectations, then that's when bites, scratches, pushes, that kind of thing usually happens. It's usually either a display of dominance or a correction saying, you fell out of line. Probably one of the best examples that you can look at would be like a dog pack or a wolf pack. If you watch them interact with each other, you'll see very much the same dynamic, where, if there's one of the wolves or whatever that falls out of line in the hierarchy or oversteps its boundary, the dominant wolf, the alpha wolf, will come in and make a correction. And these things function in a really similar manner. It's very strange. Stephanie and I, when we were starting, we began to really highly look at this because the patterns to us were so odd, and the old way of thinking about this, when you get into sort of the religious texts, and if you're reading people like Ed and Lorraine Warren and people like that, they'll tell you that there is 3 dominant ways of being with these, sort of a process of this way of being with these entities, which is infestation, oppression, and possession, which is just not, it's just not enough, right? It's just not enough. It's a very old way of thinking, and we all know that most negative entity cases never end in possession. There's lots of variables in between, and when you start to look at their behavior on a more simplistic level and take the religiousness out of it, you begin to start to see what these things are, what they're capable of, and how you can interact with them in a relatively safe manner without getting pushed or scratched or bitten or whatever. So anyway, that's a long answer to a short question, but I think it's all needed, and it actually lends into our next question, which was from Dan. So Dan has a really, really good question. It's really deep, but I really dig it. He started talking about the Christian Bible, and he says, in my rudimentary understanding of what I think it states, we seemingly exist in 2 parts, the physical and the witness. My experience with this was, to say the least, enlightening. What is your point of view on the Bible's take of the witness? Personally, I'm not convinced it is one specific entity or an extension of ourselves, as that would be too redundant. I'm curious on how it may contribute to investigations. So, huge question, and I love that. I really, really dig this. And he makes reference as well in the question to the idea of quantum mechanics and quantum physics, and whatnot. And I think, I think you are on the right track with that, Dan. So there's a few different takes, and here's the problem when it comes to like religious texts and parapsychology, because really neither the twain shall meet or should ever meet. It's like, because as soon as you intermingle religion in with parapsychology, you kind of lose you kind of lose your ground a little bit, but of course there is gems throughout all religions, that reference this type of a thing. And I'll tell you, like, not being a scholar on this myself, because it's something that I don't necessarily follow, and not being a, as I say, religious scholar on this stuff, But I can tell you that my interpretation of the idea of a witness in the terms of parapsychology, it hits a couple of different notes. So the first one is that we have ourselves the ability to witness from a perspective that is not rooted in ego. And here's what I mean by that. So when we are, say, in a situation and we're feeling fear, or we're feeling upset, or we're feeling even joy for that matter, we have the ability to witness our own emotion, which is to say we are witnessing it from the greater part of who we are, which is the non-ego spirit part of who we are. I think Abraham Hicks explains this probably the best I've ever heard. And I love the analogy that they use because it's very visual. So the way they describe it is that you have the broader non-physical part of who we are, which is the larger part of us, the part that is source energy, that's connected to all that is. It is universal. And we have this other self, this self that is existing on the planet, our little avatar running around in our meat suit, right? And we have this ability, and they call it our inner being, this larger part of who we are. So you have this larger part of who we are that has kind of all we want, everything that we've ever manifested, every thought we've ever thought, all of this that is sort of this, Christians would often call it a soul. Different religions have different names for it, but there's this greater part of who we are. And then you've got this little part of us, the little part that, say, runs around in the meat suit. And the further we are from the joy, because this inner being of ours, this soul portion of us, exists in joy. It's non-physical, it's source, it's all of these amazing things. The further we are from joy, the further we get from that inner being. And by further, I mean, think about it almost like a radio dial, right? When you start to tune out of a radio station, what ends up happening, right? You start to get pretty fuzzy, and in the world of Abraham Hicks and different channelers and things like that, that's when you start to feel negative emotion. And I found that to be very true myself. The further I get from joy, the more negative emotion, of course, I'm feeling, the less I hear the guidance from that non-physical part of me, the less my intuition works, the less my instincts work, the less, like, all of it. Just, you start to make bad decisions. You start to have crappy things happen to you. The more disconnected you are from the greater part of who you are, the more that frequency starts to shift, and you start to get other things and happening in your experience and whatever. So what I always see as when I think of something like bearing witness or being witness to, I always think of the ability to be witness from the broader part of who I am. So this ties into quantum physics, like you were saying, this idea that you can exist in two states, right? And, we talked about this on spiritual healthcare before, where you've got, and this is purely science-based, where you've got, two particles, for example, two subatomic particles, you break those in half, you've got one spinning in superposition, you've got the other one that you can focus on, which would be, say, for example, us, right? We're focused here physically in the space. We can translate our environment on a physical level. And then you've got this other part that's spinning in superposition all the time, right? It's all the probabilities, it's all the options, it's all the possibilities in our experience. And as soon as we focus into those probabilities and we focus on what we want, that superposition will stop, and we get a reality. So it very much ties into that, and I think you're completely right. So as I say, like, I don't want to comment too much on the various sects of Christianity, because there's quite a number of them that I think probably have a somewhat similar take, but everybody's kind of got a different jive on it. Same thing with Hinduism and all of these other different religions. Buddhism. I think Buddhism leans a little bit closer to the sort of the quantum physics side of it. But that would be my take on it, is the fact that I think bearing witness is witnessing something and being able to take the ego out of it so that you are witnessing from the broader part of who you are. And it's a very different place to witness from, let me tell you. Like, I often get asked in interviews and stuff, you know, are you ever freaked out? Are you scared of the phenomenon that's going on when you're in one of these places? And that's one thing I always tell people, is the fact that it's not really about being afraid. It's about being able to witness the emotion that you're having as it's happening, so you can take that information and utilize it or disregard it, depending on what it is. But if you can remove yourself from it, find that peaceful center, and then bear witness to the emotion and take a look at it objectively, you begin to see things in a very, very different light. And that sort of inner space, that space between thought, as Eckhart Tolle talks about, he references the idea of being basically being able to not only bear witness to the emotion, but finding the space between the thoughts that you're thinking, and the space that is between the thoughts that you were thinking, that peace, that calm. It doesn't have any emotion to it. It doesn't have any driving force to it. It is just simply there. It doesn't hold judgment against those thoughts. It doesn't hold judgment against anything. It's the grander part of who we are. And I think that very much has to do with you know, what's referenced in texts like the Bible, in texts like the Quran, all of these different places that you can find them. But I think there's very much something to that. So I hope that kind of answers the question. As I say, it's a little long story, long answer to a short question. But I think in relationship to paranormal investigation, because that's the second part of this question, the danger of bringing in sort of any religious text to paranormal research is the fact that not only is it outdated, because it is written in a time period where so much of this stuff is just simply not known. You know, of course, it's getting tainted by the political views of the time. You know, it's getting tainted by personal belief and opinion and so on and so forth. And we got to remember, like we've talked about spiritual healthcare before, we really do get what we believe. We get our expectations of what it is that we believe. That is what will show up. And the universe, because of the way things work, on a physical and subatomic level, this is the problem, is that, you know, as soon as we turn around and we make a decision that we are going to believe a certain thing, the universe will yield the evidence of that thing to us. So this is an issue, and of course it applies to the, you know, biblical times and stuff like that as well. So as soon as we're turning around and bringing in any sort of religious context, we have to remember that it is not the context of today. First of all, it's not the context of you know, necessarily our place in the world. You know, the times that you know, times and events and things like that were happening during that time in the environment, completely different. Everything is you know, very much relative. So, you know, when and of course you've got people as well that are trying to explain phenomenon in the best way that they possibly can, right? They really are trying to explain the best way that they can, and they are looking at this going, okay, we've seen something weird. How can we put it in a context that we really, really get, that we can explain it to the people around us? You know, and they've pulled from the best resources that they possibly have, right? And they're trying to make sense of this and explain it. So we have to really, I think, be careful in terms of the religious stuff and paranormal stuff research. Going back to the topic, say for example, of negative hauntings, I often see it, and we see it in the movies all the time, where things like Catholicism are often used, you know, Catholic exorcism, a lot of Christian rites that are used within these films to kind of explain or defeat some sort of terrible thing going on. And I think it's led to a lot of misnomers that you know, religion is going to impact paranormal activity. It just, there's simply no basis for that at all. What impacts it, however, is the fact as to, like, is whether or not it makes a difference for you. Does that specific religion make a difference for you? Does that change your vibrational state? Does that change your state of expectation? Does it change how you're feeling? Does it make you feel better? Does it make you feel like, you know, excited? Does it make you feel secure? What is it that it's doing for you? That's why you can go to any country on the planet and you can interact with these different people and individuals and all of that kind of thing, and you can have all these really cool things happen, and and experience all these really, really cool things. And each religion has a different take on what that is. They just do. They just do. They've got a different take on it. They've got a different a different spin on it, different religious context to it. I used to teach back when the world was normal. I used to teach at the social work and psychology programs in Edmonton, and taught teaching the living and whatnot. And of course, usually it was either Indigenous based or community based, where we would have people from every possible religion you could imagine. We had voodoo, we had some Indigenous people, we've had it was crazy. It was such a mixed bag, and every single person had a different take on what this phenomenon was. And as soon as they started to apply religion to it, everything went up in the air, because now you've got, instead of a group of people looking at the phenomenon itself, now you've got a people fighting over ideology as to what they believe is the root cause of what this is. So possibly the worst thing we can do is take religion and slap it on parapsychology. Not a good idea. You're never going to get anywhere, never going to work. If you go into a house and somebody is, say for example, Buddhist, and you can help to utilize what their religion is, like their practices, their prayer practices, whatever it is, to get them to a better feeling place, do it. Do it. That's part of who they are. That's part of their identity. That's part of what makes them feel good. That's the way you got to go. But if you've got a situation where the person is either not religious or, is something other than what you follow, and you are trying to assert that on them, you've lost it. Immediately right there, you've not only lost your client, you've lost perception on the investigation, lost perspective. It's out the door. So we really have to sort of come back to the core of parapsychology, to come back to the core of spirituality, and sort of to take the heat and judgment off of paranormal phenomena and take the religion out of it. And it's a hard thing to do sometimes, because, as I say, we've been taught, I think, through a lot of media and film and television and stuff like that, that is the way to go. But when you start to dig into the papers and really understand this field, you'll realize the two are just so far apart from each other. It's crazy. It's crazy. However, you get stuff like this, and it's like, what? They've got a point. They got a point, in terms of, the concept of witness and stuff like that. It's pretty cool. It's pretty cool. But I would suggest just keeping the religious factor out of it, because you'll send yourself nuts. You'll send yourself nuts. Speaking of which, not sending yourself nuts, but speaking of which, I found a fantastic reading in Faith in the Valley that I wanted to read to you guys. Good morning, Anna, by the way. Anna logged in. She says, how was your day? My day's been good. I can't complain. My day is pretty good so far. Like, I'm sleepy, but my day's pretty good. I hope your day is awesome. Faith in the Valley by Iyanla Vanzant. Of course, one of my favorite books, because no matter what you pick, you can kind of just go through the book and pick a verse per day, really. And you will always get something out of it. And over the last little while, we've been talking a lot in spiritual healthcare about decision making, what that means, the fact that we get to create our experience through affirmative decisions and lining up with what we want and lining up with the greater part of who we are, so that it can all manifest. And Iyanla had a piece on decisions, so I wanted to read this to you guys. It's pretty cool. When you make a decision and a commitment to do something good for yourself, it is like dropping a pebble in a pond. It has a rippling effect. Energy vibrations are sent out into the universe that touch people and places that you might not see. The firmer the decision, the stronger the frequency, and the wider the range of things that will be reached. Those things are being prepared to receive, support, and assist you in honoring your decision. The ripples closest to you may make you uncomfortable. They might rattle you a bit, but that's okay. It's bound to happen. A decision will usually have a long-term and far-reaching effect. However, if it is for your good, all you have to do is stand firm. All that you need will find its way to you, and the unnerving ripples around you will go away soon. I love that. I love that piece, because it's exactly what we just finished talking about. Very much about the idea of, the further you get from who you are, the fuzzier the radio signal gets, as well as the further you get from your decision, the fuzzier things get. And your decision is going to impact what you're experiencing around you. It just will. So it's funny actually when you go into, I'll briefly touch on this because it's a huge subject, but the cases of stigmata are a really, really great example of that level of decision and commitment and belief. It's really, really interesting. If any of you guys are interested in that subject, I highly recommend looking it up. Those of you guys who have not heard about it, it's the idea that some of these people who are extremely religious, extremely devout, extremely just their religion is kind of their whole experience, end up with what they feel are these sort of cuts or wounds where Jesus was hung on the cross. And it's a really interesting phenomenon to research. But you want to talk about like insane decision making and physical effects, research stigmata. It's really wild. So that being said, we have some affirmations to do before we go, if I do say so myself. Because I don't know about you guys, but I missed them last week. I really did. I missed them last week. It was good. And as I say, last week, I know we missed last week, but we're gonna get back on track. And as I say, there's more interviews that are coming up. I've got one on Friday. I got more content for you on Friday, and then whenever that comes out. And then on Sunday, there's going to be another episode of Paranormal Phenomena with Brandon Rhinus. So that will be out probably within the week as well. So there's tons of stuff coming up. And I might have some fun news for you guys as well in the next, I'd say, 48 hours or so that I will break. And it's kind of unusual, but it's cool. So anyway, that being said, we have some affirmations to do, everyone. So take a deep breath. And shake it out. Just shake that energy out. We're gonna leave any weird vibes behind us today. Shake it out. I'm a channel of peace and well-being, and my need for peace is abundantly met. I unconditionally accept, love, and appreciate myself and who I am. I recognize and am grateful for the abundance that is constantly flowing into my life, which I can choose to allow or not. I feel with every breath a sense of peace and love. I help others by maintaining and tending to my connection with Source as much as possible. This well-being is accessible to me, even in a sea of uncertainty. And at this moment, all is well. I am able to liberate myself from my past and live with peace and serenity. Keep breathing, y'all. I see and appreciate all the beauty and abundance of the life around me. I am able to embrace love while letting go of fear. And I find peace with the soothing silence of my inner being. Everybody breathe. And give one more shake out just in case. Just in case. Just in case. Just in case. Yeah, Anna was saying, I love to hear you talk about many thinking the white light to bring the white light to you. Yeah, or I'd love to hear me talk about bringing the white light too. Yeah, that's a great tool as well. You're making a really good point. A lot of people use that. It's a really great visualization of bringing that aura, bringing that light. Imagining yourself. Some people imagine like a ball of white light around them. Some people imagine a white light emanating from them from the inside out. Some people, everybody's got a different way of putting it, but it's a really, really, really good tool. Oprah uses it actually, which is kind of interesting. She's talked about it on her show a couple of times. So I think it's probably one of the most popular tools that's out there. Thank you guys for another great Wednesday. Thank you so much. This has been awesome. I hope it was informative. There's going to be there's probably going to be some weird case updates in the next little while here. I got off the phone yesterday with a client who we ended up we ran some cadaver dogs through the property this past Sunday. It was a really, really interesting case. And so at some point I will update you guys on what happened with this case that has to do with the Dogman case that I was mentioning before. Chad, if you're watching this, I'm coming for you, man. I've I have questions. I have questions because there's been some stuff that's cropped up with this case that I think you're gonna get an absolute just kick out of. So I'm at some point I'm gonna message you in the next little bit. Anyway, thank you everybody. Thank you as always. Bring in your questions, entityseeker@gmail.com. Send them. Because they're always good. As I say, I keep this stack and I'm just just going through them because you guys are brilliant. You guys are freaking brilliant. And for those of you guys who are new, of course, you can go to entityseeker.ca for all of past classes in the spiritual healthcare section. And of course on Facebook and youtube.com/entityseeker is, where you can find most things. But entityseeker.ca is really the hub, I guess, the hub of all the insanity. So anyway, everyone, have an amazing week. Have an amazing week, and I will talk to you all next Wednesday. And as I say, there'll be interviews. I'm gonna put up stuff, throughout the week anyway. So all right, bye everybody.